Corporation to order. The time is 5:53 p.m. The undersigned Secretary of the Fayette County School District Finance Corporation, the corporation, hereby gives notice to the Board of Directors of the corporation that a special meeting of the Board of Directors of the corporation has been called by the corporation president. The Fayette County School District Finance Corporation will conduct a virtual meeting on Monday, August 24th at 5:50 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time for the purpose of taking appropriate official action on approving minutes of the last meeting, approving the conveyance from the corporation to the Fayette County Board of Education of the unimproved portion of Clays Mill Elementary School, and approving the officers of the corporation. Please be advised, in this state of a proclaimed national emergency and under a similar declaration by the governor, it is not currently feasible for the corporation to provide meeting room conditions in the face of COVID-19, a highly contagious virus that spreads between people who are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet. Under these exceptional circumstances in which the Commonwealth of Kentucky is confronting a worldwide pandemic, while nevertheless needing to accomplish critical public business pursuant to KRS 61.840, the Fayette County School District Finance Corporation will not provide a primary physical location for public viewing and will proceed pursuant to KRS 61.826 with concessions outlined in the Attorney General's opinion OAG 20-05. Thus, the public can access the media via the live stream but cannot be physically present at the meeting. I'll now entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the June 22nd, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Love.
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Morris. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. At this time, a motion is ordered to approve the conveyance of unimproved portion of Clays Mill Elementary.
So moved.
Is that Mr. Daniels?
Yes, ma'am.
Yep, motion by Mr. Daniels.
Second.
Second by Mr. Murphy. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. At this time, a motion is ordered to confirm the following individuals as officers of the corporation: Stephanie Spires, President; Ray Daniels, Vice President; Emmanuel Cox, Secretary; and John White, Treasurer.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Love.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Morris. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. At this time, a motion is in order to adjourn this meeting of the Fayette County School District Finance Corporation.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Daniels.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Murphy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion carries 5-0. We are now adjourned. And
Okay, Ms. Spires, we need to pause for just a second. We've got to correct a technical issue that we're having before we go into the regular meeting.
Well, I was going to say also we have to reconvene. We cannot reconvene before 6 p.m. anyway, so we have a
good.
5-minute break.
I'll let you know when we're ready to go after 6 p.m. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you.
get to 90 today, maybe?
I apologize for that. We are ready to start.
Is everybody here? All right. Everybody's present and accounted for, right? Okay. Hold on. Good evening. I will now call the specially called regular meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education to order. The time is 6:12 p.m. and we apologize for the delay. We did have an issue with broadcasting and we wanted to get that taken care of. Pursuant to KRS Chapter 61, notice is hereby given that on August 21st, 2020, the chair of the Fayette County Board of Education called a special meeting of the Board of Education for Monday, August 24th, 2020 at 6 p.m. The Fayette County Public Schools Board of Education will conduct a virtual meeting on Monday, August 24th, 2020 at 6 p.m. This will be a virtual meeting streamed online. The link for the meeting is fcps.net/virtual meeting. This is the board's monthly regular meeting, but is especially called because it will be conducted virtually. Please be advised, in the state of a proclaimed national emergency and under a similar declaration by the governor, it is not currently feasible for the board to provide meeting room conditions in the face of COVID-19, a highly contagious virus that spreads between people who are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet. Under the exceptional circumstances in which the Commonwealth of Kentucky is confronting a worldwide pandemic while nevertheless needing to accomplish critical public business pursuant to KRS 61.840, the Fayette County Public Schools Board of Education will not provide a primary physical location for public viewing and will proceed pursuant to KRS 61.826 with concessions outlined in the Attorney General's opinion OAG 20-05. Thus, the public can access the media via the live stream but cannot be physically present at the meeting. Mrs. Daly, will you please take roll call?
Good evening. Mr. Raymond Daniels,
Present.
Mr. Darrell Love,
Present.
Miss Christy Morris,
Present.
Mr. Tyler Murphy,
Present.
Miss Stephanie Spires.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Daly. I'd like to take a moment and welcome everyone who is watching and who's tuned in this evening. I know that it is a lot is going on. We have about 36 hours until school starts here on Wednesday morning. And I know that our staff is working so hard to get everyone where they're supposed to be with the materials they need. And I want to take a moment and really praise our teachers and our staff and our leaders and our administrators for really going above and beyond to do so. To our families, I want to say thank you for your patience and your support. This is new to all of us. We know that there are still a lot of answers and still a lot of questions that need to be answered. And we hope that we answer some of those this evening. And so I really just want to say thank you. I know it's a busy time. I was just saying before the meeting, all 4 of my children have an event at their school this evening as well. So I understand that parents are spread and family members are spread. So I appreciate that as well. A little bit of housekeeping is that this month marks 2 years as my term as school board chair. And so when I was going back through and figuring out what we needed to do, I realized that between Miss Bacon leaving early and Mr. Price and some of the events over the past few years, we have gotten off of when we really should be doing school board elections. So this evening, what we need to do is we need to re-elect the school board chair and vice chair as like an interim, basically, till January. And then in January, when we have new board members that will come on with a new election, we will hold a new election for board chair and vice chair. And those roles will serve for 2 years and will be elected every 2 years going forward. And so at this time, I would like to turn the meeting over to the superintendent and give him the authority to preside over the election of board chair.
May I interrupt real quickly? I'm getting a message that the feed has been lost again. Can Bob check on that?
I'm already working on it.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure if it's just Facebook or if it's everything, so
Okay. Are we good to proceed, Bob?
give me just a second. We are good to proceed.
All right. So at this time, a motion is ordered to give the superintendent authority to preside over the election of board chair. Oh, wait, excuse me. Stop. Okay, so here's the issue. I actually need to take a motion to amend the agenda first, because the agenda only says we need to do board chair, but in my research, we actually need to do board chair and vice chair this evening. So I need a motion to amend the agenda to add the addition of voting for the vice chair.
I'll make a motion to add the election of vice chair to the agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris.
I'll second.
And I have a second by Mr. Murphy. Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. At this time, a motion is in order to give the superintendent authority to preside over the election of board chair and vice chair.
I'll make a motion for the superintendent to preside over the election of chair and vice chair.
All right, so we have a
I'll
motion by Mr. Daniels and a second by, is that Mr. Love?
Yes.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Superintendent Cock, the board is now in your hands.
Thank you, Board. I will now open the floor to nominations for the position of Fayette County Board of Education Chairperson.
I'll nominate Stephanie Spires.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations or nominees?
I move to close the floor to nominations.
All right, you got it. Efficient. And I'll call for a vote. We have it was moved by, I believe, Board Member Daniels, second by Board Member Morris. Is that correct? And call for a vote by Board Member Murphy. All in favor of Stephanie Spires being named the chair of the Fayette County Fayette County Board of Education. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries 5-0. Congratulations, Stephanie. You're now chair of Fayette County Board of Education and all the power that entails. I would entertain a motion to turn the meeting back over to the chair.
So moved.
All right, so moved by Board Member Morris, second by Board Member Daniels. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, unanimous again. Chairwoman Spires, the board is in your hands.
Thank you. Now I will entertain a motion for the vice chair, or entertain nominations for vice chair.
I
Madam Chair.
nominate
Go
Ray Daniels I nominate Ray Daniels to serve as interim vice chair.
So,
I second.
any other nominations?
Move to close the nominations.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Murphy and a second by Mr. Love. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. And thank you all for working with us to clarify that. I didn't know I was going down a rabbit hole. I just knew the policy said 2 years. So when I looked into it, then I realized we've done a lot. We've done a lot of weird things over the last decade. So
The nominees make speeches, so if you and Ray need to make a speech.
no, we're gonna keep this short. Like,
Keep it moving.
Yeah, I was ready to make my nomination speech for Ray Daniels, how he has served this board well. And
Thank you, Daryl.
all right. At this time, we'll continue on with our regular school board agenda. I do want to say that there will be a lot of information out this evening, and it really is important that we all work together. We know that the worst thing that can happen is miscommunication, and we know that there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of buildup over the next few days, and it is our commitment as a board to really work to make sure that we're putting out information that is accurate. And if you have questions, come to us, and also to my fellow board members. If you have questions after this meeting, make sure we follow up with the superintendent and follow the proper protocols, because I just want to make sure that we're all working together to put out accurate information. I know there's a lot of questions that I think this evening will be answered. But if we have additional questions following this meeting, we definitely want to work to make sure that our families have the answers that they need, have the materials that they need, and are in the programs that they need to be in. So that is our commitment. I really do think everyone's going to land where they're supposed to land. It's just, this is new for everybody. And I just encourage everybody to really be patient, be kind, be thankful to the teachers and the staff that are working around the clock to get everybody where they need to be. I am so appreciative of everything that they've been doing. And so that is our commitment as a board. We are working to get through all your emails and all your messages. And, we're all working together on this, and we will get through. Just remember, our children are watching us, and they're watching how we react, and they're watching how we act, and we need to be those leaders, and we need to, we can get through this together, and we will. We're going to have good times, and we're going to have bad times, and that's okay too. But again, my commitment from us as a board is that this administration and Fayette County Schools is really going to work to put out accurate information. And if you have questions, come to us. I know the rumor mill is going, but we will work with you. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Ray Daniels to give us our mission statement.
Our mission is to create a collaborative community that ensures all students achieve at high levels and graduate prepared to excel in a global society.
At this time, I'll accept a motion to adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting with the changes that we already voted on earlier.
I'll make a motion to adopt this agenda with the changes that we made earlier.
So we have a motion by Ms.
Second.
Moore.
Second.
A second from Mr. Daniels. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, I will turn the agenda over to Superintendent for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Board. And as the Chair acknowledged on behalf of the Board, certainly accolades are warranted for our teachers, our staff, district, school leadership, as we try to make the first day of school as special as it can be for all of our learners. And I also do want to take this time to offer a moment of silence and our condolences to the young men whose lives were tragically extinguished far too soon. Members of our Fayette County family. On Friday, I had the opportunity to go to Bracktown, First Baptist Church of Bracktown, to be there to try to console teachers and staff at the Carter G. Woodson Academy and the students, along with Dr. Cleveland and Dr. Akins and others who spoke, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Kozar, and certainly our school director, Ms. Boateng. There that evening was our crisis response team. And got to commend Doug Adams and his team for being boots on the ground and being there to support in these unfortunate circumstances, tragic circumstances, our students, our staff through the grief process. And also Vita Stewart from Family Community Engagement was there as well to help provide that support. And this is going on far to spend too many of these feelings and too many of our having to express our condolences to our families who have lost mothers, lost a son, father who lost a son, sibling lost a brother, etc. That more must be done to protect our young people. And so before I begin the superintendent's report, I'd just like to offer, if we could, if we would, if you wouldn't mind joining me in a moment of silence. Thank you. With that said, I want to move into the agenda. First up, I want to give you an update on technology, and you'll be hearing from a director of technology, Mr. Bob Moore.
Okay, good afternoon. Let me get my screen shared here. Okay, so we just wanted to give you a quick update on technology as we go into NTI 2DL. It's going to be a very kind of important part of what we do over the next few weeks. So as we looked at the requirements for remote instruction, we really looked at several different areas in order to make the remote instruction as effective as possible. So first was professional learning. Second was software that we're providing to both teachers, staff, and students. Specific tools for teachers that we wouldn't necessarily need in the classroom, but that we have to have for remote instruction. Connectivity for both staff and students, devices specifically for students, and then teacher, student, and family support. So as we look through those, one of the most important things that often gets overlooked is professional learning. And the Office of Teaching and Learning, the Office of Instructional Technology, had a week where the teachers had come back, but that we did not have the students come back because the board adjusted the calendar. And they developed some really nice intentional and planned training for all instructional staff. Both those departments also have some on-demand training available for teachers as they go throughout the year. And then we have a partnership with UK for ongoing support for our teachers, because this professional learning could not be a one and done. It has to be something that goes on throughout the year as we either transition back into in-person instruction or we continue with NTI throughout the year. The next thing that we looked at was software, and this was something where Fayette County was really strong even prior to NTI last year. But we looked at a couple different things in order to help our teachers be more effective. And so for video conferencing software, we were able to, with our existing budget, get a Zoom license for every teacher in the district to give them a user-friendly option that they could use to have synchronous face-to-face instruction with their students. We also have Google Meet and Microsoft Teams available. So there are several different platforms that they can use for that. Another thing was a piece of software that we needed was screen recording software. And this is important as teachers are recording lessons. A lot of times they will want to record examples of what they're doing or presentations, those types of things. And so we were able to, within the existing budget again, purchase a license for Screencastify. The good thing about this license is it not only provides a license for every staff member in the district, but it also provides a license for every student in the district. So with that software, students can also record their screen, send it back to their teacher if they want to either get some help so the teacher can see what's going on for presentations, any of those types of things. The students can also record their screens. Our learning management system we put in place about 4 years ago. So we're using Canvas for middle and high schools and Google Classroom for elementary schools. Office 365 and Google Suite for Education are all of the Office products. So Microsoft Word, Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, Google Pages, all of those kind of things are available to every staff member and every student. Whenever we have been purchasing curriculum over the past few years, a big piece of that has been the digital components of those curriculums. And so those are available to students as well. And that was a lot of these things are forward thinking that we were already doing prior to the COVID pandemic. And so we're just continuing with these things, expanding it, training more teachers on these things so that we can continue to be effective. Also, we have MAP that we are going to be able to administer to every student, whether they're on campus or not. So whenever we have the students that need to take a MAP test, we can do that remotely as well as we could in the classroom. We have some other assessment platforms, whether it's through our learning management system, through the curriculum products that we can use in order to make sure that we know where students are and to make sure that learning is taking place. Whenever we look at some specific teacher tools, and sometimes this seems trivial, but it really isn't. Whenever we set up technology in the classroom, we usually don't include webcams because we really don't need webcams for teachers. In a remote instruction environment, it becomes very, very important to have those webcams so that students and teachers can interact. So over the past probably 2 or 3 weeks, we've put almost 800 webcams out into the district and into teachers' hands. We have a couple hundred more on order, and I'm continuing to talk to vendors until we have those for all of our teachers. Microphones and speakers, because you have to have audio that goes back and forth. Typically, the webcams include the microphones, and most of our classrooms already had speakers. So we're in pretty good shape there. We're fulfilling those requests pretty quickly to make sure that the teachers and students can interact fully. On connectivity, we've distributed almost 1,100 hotspots, and we're ordering more from T-Mobile. We have some available still, and I lined through that because that was a change today after I created the presentation. We are not out of hotspots, but we are down to where we are holding some back for a case-by-case basis. Special ed students that have accommodations or needs additional support until we get the additional hotspots in from T-Mobile. So we're being a little bit more intentional with those as well to make sure that the students who need them the most are getting those hotspots. So we expect to have more from T-Mobile very soon. We've had a very rapid increase in the requests for those as we got closer to the beginning of the school year. In the first several months, we had distributed probably between 400 and 500. And in the last month, we've distributed about 500. So those requests have kind of skyrocketed, which just shows the need that we have in this district. And so we're taking care of those. Student devices.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
What is the eligibility requirements for the hotspots?
So the eligibility from the beginning has been if a student or a family does not have internet access at home, they can request a hotspot. We've tried to leave the eligibility kind of a little bit open. We didn't want to restrict it to students who receive free or reduced lunch because we know that circumstances change. And we've gotten requests from folks that want to take a hotspot to daycare or to a learning pod or to something like that, but we have limited resources, and we really have to make sure that we're taking care of the funds that the board has allocated for this. And so we really have to restrict it to those students at home. Whenever we start looking at providing hotspots to students going to daycare we're really looking at providing hotspots and internet access to those businesses. And so we have to be really careful and really focus on those students who need it the most. And that's really why the requirements are for students who do not have internet access at home.
Thank you.
And it's about closing, I'm sorry.
Thank you for explaining. The only concern that I had is one parent who said that the grandmother was going to be helping care for the child, and that they didn't meet the requirements because it wasn't at home. But I understand the others make total sense. So thank you for explaining.
And thank you for that example, Board Member Morris. I think that gets to that case by case, why relationships matter. To your point, if Frisky was talking to that family and certainly understand the circumstances, would in that case, without even more information, would make that hotspot available based on what you just shared, just on those facts alone.
Make sure she reaches out
Well,
and just.
go ahead. And that's what I was going to say, is just the communication piece on that is particularly important, because I think we have some families that are under the impression that they're not eligible for a hotspot if they're sending their child, if they're acquiring childcare. So they have internet at home, but both parents work. And so, like the superintendent said, it's a case-by-case basis. So as long as we make it clear to families that, look, if you explain your situation to us, then we're going to work with you. I don't want anyone to think that we're going to make families choose between working or staying at home and helping their child with NTI if they don't have any other childcare options. So will we have the capabilities to provide hotspots on those case-by-case needs?
So I'll chime in here as just a parent for a hot minute. Every single meeting I've been to, it has been like, as a parent, it has been said, if you need internet, we'll take care of it. Give me your name. I was in one meeting where one of the individuals did not speak English, and they were able to translate and get her information right there off the bat. So I do want to just kind of say, my personal experience at 3 different schools and 4 different classes and 4 different grades is that the teachers are doing a phenomenal job making sure, and I've seen it also in emails going out, which granted, if you're sending an email and you don't have internet, like, it's a little tricky there. But I will say, like, the text messages, I feel like as a parent, I've gotten it multiple times that said, like, if you need internet, let us know. So I do want to commend the staff for doing that. And then, Mr. Moore, if you can maybe touch a little bit on Mr. Murphy's question.
Well, I'm just going to add to Board Member Murphy's point is that, we want to send in a very explicit way that we're here to help. We're not here to erect barriers, for families and make it even more difficult. We're on your side. Families are our partners. So we want to help you so that you have the resources to help your child. And that's what's most important to us. And I think we were down to a case by case as we're waiting for the next shipment to come in, if you will. We just want to be judicious with the remaining hotspots that we do have available. So Bob, could you share what we have on hand?
So we're down to less than 50 on hand. We have 500 that should be in very quickly. We work with T-Mobile in advance of getting down to that many, so or to that few available. So we're expecting to have those additional hotspots next week is what we're looking at.
I think you would see a spike certainly at the beginning of the school year. It would jump and then it would start to dissipate as we move into the school year.
That's what we see.
I know back in the spring, like Spectrum was offering free service to some families. Do we know if any provider is doing something similar for this fall, or have we not heard that?
There is a federal program that helps low-income families get internet access. We've sent that information out a couple of times. It's probably about time that we send that out again, because we do want to provide them with as many opportunities as possible to get internet access. And in some cases, it's going to be the Lifeline program. In some cases, it'll be a hotspot from us. But we do share that information on a regular basis. We've worked with some of our partners to examine what it would look like to provide some like apartment complexes and things like that, some coverage on wireless internet to help our students out. We really try to explore as many options as we can because there is no one size fits all. Sometimes there are more effective ways to cover where we have a large number of students than a hotspot. And so we look at those on a fairly regular basis to see what's practical and reasonable. And we try to leverage as many partnerships with some of the companies that provide this type of service in the district. And so it's a big problem, and it's been one that when Manny first came to the district, Manny and I came in within about a week of each other, and this is one of the things we talked about at the very beginning, along with being one-to-one. This is an equity issue, and it's an opportunity issue, and there are so many things that not having internet hinders people about. And so this is something that we've worked on very diligently, and it's something that even after this pandemic is past, that I'm going to continue to work on. And I think we've made some gains because of the pandemic that we'll be able to learn from and implement going forward. So we're committed to work with every family to either find a way for us to help them with the internet, for a partner to help them with internet. The one thing that we haven't done that some districts have done is, lean on some of the community partners like churches and things like that. And we just kind of made the decision early on that kind of goes against the guidance with the COVID pandemic, because then what we're doing is encouraging people to all go to the same place. Yeah. And so we've kind of refrained from that. Maybe as in the future, that's something we'll look at as the pandemic kind of hopefully eases up. But that's just one of those options that we've looked at that you all probably haven't heard much about that we're doing. And that's, we're making those decisions with the safety of the community in mind as well.
Yeah, and it's a different balance too, because some of the low income provider services that they offer may be lower speeds, and it's harder for families to access, especially if they have multiple children. So there are a lot of things, a lot of moving parts. So I know that there's a lot going on, but we appreciate the information and the communication with families.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and I think this really does provide us with, first of all, the data to understand a little bit more about where we have our gaps, because we'll be able to kind of map that out. And what you're starting to see with a lot of communities is how they are addressing this whole digital divide type of issue. And I don't think it's just a problem we've got to, of course, be able to deal with the immediate need that we have. But we have members in our community that are still suffering because they do not have access. And so when we talk about the equity issue, I think this is a larger conversation for us to have also with our city council members and then, of course, the city government around how do we sit there and solve this particular issue for our community and be innovative with that. But I do commend the team on doing everything that we can to make sure that our students have access, because this is going to be very important to them.
And when we looked at last year, when we first looked at doing this and we talked to the board, we estimated costs based on 2,000 hotspots. And so, as we're trying to balance three things really is access for our families, health and safety within the pandemic, and then the managing financial resources well. I think we've done that to the best of our ability, and we do have some room to grow. We didn't want to order 2,000 hotspots right at the beginning and then have 1,000 of them sitting there not being used for 6 months. And so, there's a balance there. Another thing that we do is we're working to actively manage these hotspots so that we can see which ones are being used, which ones aren't being used. We can track, the websites that the devices are going to, so that we can, make sure that the hotspots are being used and that we're not paying for something that's just sitting there. And so we really have tried to make sure that we're doing that to be good stewards of the money at the same time that we're serving our students. Any more questions about that? I'll move on to the next slide. Okay, this is another hot topic, and this is one that we're working very, very hard on. We started ordering devices as soon as this year's funds were available. We have a partner that we work with, and we have 12,000 Chromebooks ordered for students. We have some other ones ordered for staff, but I've been on the phone with the vendor almost every day for the last 2 weeks. Dave Carty, my associate director for support, has been on the phone. I had a meeting this morning with their vice president, and we have done everything we can to move those devices up in the queue. I don't mind trying to leverage the size and purchasing power of Fayette County Public Schools because I'm looking out for our students. So we've been able to get a couple of our orders expedited without any additional cost. We've kind of adjusted the devices that we're ordering in order to make sure that the supply chain is as robust as it can be. And so with that being said, those devices are not going to get here before Wednesday. And so what we've been doing as a district is we want to make sure that we provide devices where they are needed. And so we're shifting devices within the district. For example, high school students are more likely to have their own device than middle or elementary students. Last year, we went one-to-one with middle schools. We've had a couple of middle schools that were short, but we were able to fulfill their requests for additional devices. And so what we've done is we've worked with the high schools to make sure that the high schools are giving devices as much as possible to students who need them. And then we're taking some of those devices and shifting them down to the elementary schools. So we're putting a priority on the elementary schools to make sure that those students get started off with a device in their hands if possible, because it's a little bit easier also for high school students to adjust and be flexible. So while we don't have all of the devices in that we've ordered, we do expect some either this week or next week. We expect probably about 3,000 between now and the end of next week, with the balance of those coming over the next couple of weeks and maybe into October. We're going to keep on the vendors here in order to get those devices to our students. In most cases, we're able to shift some things around, and as schools request them, get them to the right places. We fulfilled another request today. We've got several tomorrow that are going in. And even smaller schools like Scapa emailed us today and said they had about 27 extra Chromebooks. So we're picking those up in the morning, and we're going to move those to another school that needs 27 Chromebooks. And so all of the schools are doing their part. Frederick Douglass emailed me today, and they have a surplus. And so we're going to pick those up tomorrow and use those as well. So while it's not the news that we had hoped for, we're making it work. And the technology staff and Dave Carty are really working hard to make sure that we get devices where they need to be. And this is another one where if a school needs our help, they just need to let us know. We have that request process in place. I'm communicating with the principals and the school technology coordinators on a regular basis, multiple times a week, just to keep them up to date on that process. So I'm going to pause here and make sure there are no questions about devices, because I know this is a big issue.
I've had a few parents reach out to me with struggles getting a device with our virtual learning academy. And okay, go ahead.
Yep. The Virtual Learning Academy, as we were enrolling students, we did a questionnaire so that so we knew how many of those students needed devices. And right now it's about a third of those students. And so what we're looking at, I talked to Soraya, Dr. Matthews, I don't know, it seems like 10 times a day. And we're looking at 2 distribution points, one Wednesday, probably in around the Fayette County warehouse. We have a good parking lot there, and one Thursday on the other side of town to get those devices to as many of those students as possible. I'll have the final numbers and information on that tomorrow. Some of those are those Frederick Douglass devices that I talked about, are being primarily earmarked for the Virtual Learning Academy. So that's something that we knew we were working on, and so we have a plan in place to get those, as many of those students' devices this week as possible. Um, we didn't want to communicate that with the parents until we had a little bit more concrete plans for them. And so that will be communicated with them tomorrow after we get the Frederick Douglass devices and get a few more things in place. I got that email from Lester Diaz over at Frederick Douglass at about 5:15 this afternoon. So this is some of this is the very latest information that we have.
So
I do
question,
want to, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I do want to commend our school leaders, certainly at the secondary level, for understanding that we're all in this together. Yes, we are one-to-one in terms of, we pay for the product. Now we're just waiting to receive it. And so we're trying to be as creative and as thoughtful and as collaborative as we can be in this time and space, considering the needs that are out there, in anticipation of the order that is yet to come, but also as we begin to shift some of these devices between schools and between programs.
so my question is real quick, kind of building on what Board Member Morris said. So if I'm a family and I don't have a device and I'm not picking it up till Wednesday or Thursday, how am I starting VLA?
So there are, with VLA, it's a very different start of the school year. We've enrolled probably, I think on the last count, and hopefully I'm correct on this, about 1,800 students in a brand new program in just really about 4 days. One of the great things about the Virtual Learning Academy is it is an asynchronous model. And so even though a student doesn't have a device on Wednesday and they start on Thursday, they won't miss the instruction on Wednesday because of that asynchronous model. All of the content, while it's very much reliant on that student to teacher interaction, it's not like a traditional model where that interaction has to happen between 9 and 3 every single day. The flexibility of the Virtual Learning Academy lends itself to really helping out during the pandemic, and we do have a little bit of flexibility there. So we're communicating with those families. Learning and teaching is a lot more than having a computer and a device and going through a session on Canvas. And so that communication still happens. Expectations for the students are still being set between teachers and students and families. And so as we're starting school on Wednesday, even though they're not getting the instruction on that device, we're still interacting with those families to set up the school year, to make sure that they understand those expectations in the virtual learning classroom, just like they would in any other classroom. And so it's unfortunate that they're not going to have a device on Wednesday, but we have plans in place that will help with that and still kick off the year in the best way possible.
And the one thing that I want to make sure that we're communicating to families, because you've said it, but it families are just, we're overwhelmed right now. If you are a family that does not have a device and absolutely needs a device, let us know, and we are going to make sure you have a device. This is like the hotspots, case by case, priority. We're making sure those that have services and those that have nothing. If you are a family and you have access to another device, you are still going to get a Chromebook. But if you have, so I've had family, like I had a kind of what Mr. Murphy was saying, I had a family where they're working and they said, well, we don't, we're both using our computers. Like we don't have anything that our child can use. Let the district know. And so I want to just reiterate that. I don't want this to be a blanket, like we don't have Chromebooks, because we do. We're just prioritizing, and like you said, the elementary kids, because we know the older kids have their own devices and such. And we will get there. And I also want to just commend the staff, because when these 3,000 come in the next week, your staff is going to bring them in. You're going to inventory them. You're going to have to set them up and put some of the little things before you move them out. And same thing like what you pick up tomorrow. And so that's what, I really reiterate to families is that your staff is working. And I just want to say thank you to the technology staff, because I know you all are just taking these in, fixing them, correcting them, moving them on, and moving them out. And so I really just want to say thank you for that. And know that it is a process, but your team is working like crazy. In addition to answering the phone lines and giving everybody their passwords today, including myself. So I just really want to appreciate say thank you. But I think Mr. Murphy has a question.
Well, it was the same question about how our kids going to start VLA without a device. What about our NTI 2DL kids? So the kids who are enrolled in NTI 2DL, if they don't have a device, especially at the elementary level, what contingencies are in place at the school level, at the classroom level, to start the school year for those students?
And Bob, before you answer that, I'm just going to throw this real example out. I don't think that the kids at Cardinal Valley in the kindergarten classes have any Chromebooks, as far as what I've heard as of today. So that would go along with Mr. Murphy's question, but I just wanted to let you know. I'm sure you are aware, but I just wanted to make sure it was on your radar.
So, thank you. We're working with all of those schools, and as those requests come in, for example, with Cardinal Valley, we're working with those to determine the exact number that they need to turn those around and get them back out. We do have some that are going to schools tomorrow. We had some that went to schools today. So I don't have the list in front of me. I really trust Dave to take care of that. And so we are getting devices to schools as quickly as possible. So that's really I know I've said that a lot, but again, it's we're being as flexible and as imaginative as possible in order to take care of all of our students. We've had some parents offer to bring their devices back and some things like that. So the school leaders have been amazing in all of this. That's where the real work is happening. Victory is in the classroom is one of our core values, and that's still true. The relationships that the schools build with students are the most important thing. They know those families, and so we rely on the schools to let us know what those needs are, and especially those critical needs, so that we can take care of those. The district offices are here to support the schools because they're the ones face to face with those students and families every day.
Instructionally, then, do we have plans in place, or are we just leaving it to the district? So for example, I'm starting with my students. I have 5 sections of virtual learning on Wednesday. If I have a student in my second period class that doesn't have a device, what do I as a teacher need to do? Do we have instructional contingencies in place for those students?
So I am not the person to answer that.
And
I would really leave that to
maybe a superintendent or someone can chime in on that.
Yeah. Where's Soraya?
I'm also here. Also,
and Sharonda. This is
Mr. Murphy, I'd like to address your concerns, and I totally understand that. I met with my chiefs this afternoon, and as they have shared with me, they have contingency plans. The principals are always looking ahead, and they are. So with that being in mind, they have already, have plans for providing that additional support in lieu of the Chromebooks, as far as packets or project-based learning, different activities that the kids can do in lieu of that, because they understand and they just prepare, and that's what they do. So my chiefs have spoken to that, addressed that today. And so I feel like our schools are prepared, especially having gone through this in the spring, of raising the level of NTI 2DL. And then after all the PD that we've had this fall, I'm sure that they are prepared to meet the needs of their kids, because that's what teachers do, as you know. So you have to adjust yourselves and do what you can do, and do what you do best for kids. I'm sure that there are chiefs on here on the that are part of the board that can also speak up and address your concerns if they would at this time.
Well, I was just gonna say this goes back to kind of like my parent meetings that I've been in. I feel like it's being said, and I think Mr. Murphy, at least this is just my parent. This is not me. That this is less of an issue than VLA because they're really working to get the devices in these families' hands at the school level as the priority. So for example, I was on a call and like two parents needed them and I think it was taken care of. And so that is just my perception as a parent, not board member, not anything, that is where the priority is. But I defer to the staff for sure.
And all of our schools have contingency plans. They all have contingency plans because that's what they do. That's what they
What
do.
is our communication timeline for families, both for the VLA families and for NTI2DL? So are they going to know, what does that timeline look like for, hey, you won't have a Chromebook by X date. This is what that looks like moving forward. How do we plan to communicate that to those families?
So the communication going out this evening to families, certainly with the Virtual Learning Academy family, you won't know until Wednesday or Thursday in order to get them that drive through, if you will. And then those that are remaining will have to fulfill that order with the shipment that should be here, hopefully by the end of next week.
And Tyler, and the school basis, it's on a school by school basis. And I know, for example, like for one of my kids who is picking up devices literally right now, that they got a text this morning that said, check your email. Here's a link to a newsletter, pick up Chromebooks. They also got a dojo reminder. Like they're hitting, but this was just one school. And I think I got hit like 8 times. Just as a reminder, but I know like with all my schools, it seems to be school by school basis, but the schools are sending basically daily updates. All 3 of my kids' schools. So I assume, and Miss Morris, you can maybe chime in, or Mr. Daniels, like I know that I'm getting constant just updates even about everything. They're just basically putting out like a daily newsletter.
Communication from our teachers has been wonderful in our administration. So I'm hopeful that that's what's happening at every school. But yeah, I have nothing but positive things to say as a parent.
Yeah, board chair, that 381 number keeps popping up on my phone. And we're in full swing in communication. I can tell you that.
I ditto that as a parent as well.
Missed the days.
I'm going to move on to something that I'm really, really proud of. This is something that we implemented last spring. Is the help desk for families. So on the teacher and staff side, we have several layers of support. We have the school technology coordinator. We have one of those in every single school. In some cases, that's an additional duty for a teacher or another staff member. We have district technical support, and this is my staff that really does an amazing job, and the Office of Instructional Technology that helps with the instructional technology side, a lot of professional learning. They do an amazing job. We've got some staff members that are working in schools. We have some that are working the phones, a lot that are working the phones, but probably the thing that I'm the most proud of is the student and family support line. When we went into NTI last year, we knew that there was no way that we could expect to have any kind of virtual learning without providing support directly to students and families from my technical staff. And so we have that number, and I put it out at every presentation that I do, 381-4410. This week, those hours went back to 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening. We want to meet families when and where they are learning, rather than trying to put them into a limited number of hours that would have been a traditional school day. And so we have that number staffed with multiple staff members. Families can get help with any technical issue there, whether it's Chromebooks or hotspots, Infinite Campus, e-curriculum support. We even help provide state ID numbers for the EBD cards over the summer. And so um, I, I really can't say enough about my staff and the work that they're doing there. By last count, we took almost 500 phone calls on that line today. And so we really are working to support those students during this time of virtual learning, and that support is for any Fayette County Public Schools student or family member. So whether it's Virtual Learning Academy or NTI 2DL through one of our schools, we're there to help. And that again, that's really the thing that I'm the most proud of, because we've taken and essentially stood up a help desk to help 42,000 students and their families in a very short time last spring, and we've continued that throughout the summer. And then now we're back to those full 12-hour days, not individuals working 12-hour days, but the help desk as a whole. And so we have that support going on every day, Monday through Friday. And that is it for technology. If you have any questions, any additional questions, I'll answer them or try to answer them now.
And I will say that because I know there's a lot of uncertainty and we've peppered you with a lot of questions, but I have gotten very positive feedback about the help desk. I think that is a great thing for our staff, for our families. So thank you all for putting that together, because that has been a significant help. And I will say I've sent that phone number to a lot of people saying, hey, you're having a tech issue, here's the help desk number. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Bob, I also want to commend you on that, because I've had several families and also had to call the help desk a few times, and it was really helpful. And so it's something that you should be proud of, and thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, no, I echo it. It's great. I've had to call it as a parent, and they're so kind and gracious, and everybody, I mean, the staff's phenomenal, and it's definitely needed. I mean, if you look at your kindergartner, and I remember asking my kindergartner in March, like, what her email was and what her login was, and she looked at me like, what are you talking about? So I appreciate everything you all have done.
One key that I do want to mention with that help, the family helpline, we have worked with the ELL department to make sure that the techs also know how to use the language line, so that we can provide support in multiple languages as well. That is something that was critical for us to do, because we do have a lot of families that do not speak English as their primary language, and we don't want to exclude them from getting the help that they need. And I really want to give credit to Dave Carty and Leah Adams and Brandon Wade and Dana Etter, Roger Mullins. They're the team leaders, and Misty Randall. They're the team leaders, and Dave is, like I said, my associate support. They're the ones who get credit for that, not me, because I just said, yeah, let's do it, and they've done all the hard work. So.
Right, thanks, Bob. Next, we'll talk about how we're going to feed our babies and nourish our babies during this time of virtual learning. So I'm going to ask Michelle Coker and Byron Thompson to come for a presentation.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Koch.
Good evening, pardon. You meant to speak up a little bit.
Okay, that's what I wanted to. Is this better?
A little more.
Is this better?
There you go, getting there. Good.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Just like to thank you all for this opportunity. Next. Bob, slide, next.
There's going to be a little bit of a delay sometimes.
Oh.
So.
Okay. Okay, I would just like to give a huge gratitude or appreciation to my child nutrition staff. They jumped on the front lines starting March 16th and carried on through August 16th. They were very fluid, very flexible. In starting that program, we were able to operate the summer feeding program. March through May, we did 5 days of meals a week for students and households and families. And then June through August, we were able to do 7 days a week. So just in that short amount of time, we've served over 500,000 meals through July. And then we're still getting our August numbers in. Next. Okay, so we start school on August 26th. We will go back with the National School Lunch Program. That's a program that we operate during our school, when our schools do come back on board. It is for our enrolled students. We will only have meals on school days, on calendar school days, and the meal pricing will be based on paying, reduced, and free status.
Michelle, can you, I don't know if the next slide does it, but can you compare or contrast this to the waiver and how we ended the school year in the spring?
Okay, so we ended the school year in the summer, or the spring of May.
Yes, in terms of feeding.
Okay, so when USDA allowed us to start feeding students when schools were shut down, they allowed us to do the summer feeding program. The summer feeding program was for anyone 18 years and younger. They did not necessarily have to be a student, and they were free. All students were free as well. The National School Lunch Program is for enrolled students, and then they go back to if they're free, paying, or reduced status. Our reduced status do get free meals.
I want to be clear about that, that it's two separate programs based on the waiver. It's going to look different than the spring. And I know Kentucky Department of Education, the state has applied for the waiver.
Yes, as long as the whole, as well as the whole USA has done the same thing.
How confident are you that we will get the waiver?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I'm going to be optimistic, considering the pandemic. Nothing's really changed from the spring to our current present. We're still dealing with the pandemic, so I'm hoping that it will get approved. But until we hear otherwise, we have to adhere to this model.
Correct, and we're all being as optimistic as we can. Yes. Next. So when we start back the school year, can anybody hear me? Okay, we start back the school year. We are expanding from 21 sites to 47 sites. We are also expanding the pickup time from 11 to 1, and we're doing that 2 days a week as we have done it in the past. On Monday, they will receive 2 days of meals, and on Wednesdays, 3 days of meals. They will get a grab and go meal that they can reheat at home, which we've been doing this since the last spring. Next. With that, meals can be picked up at any location. So if you have students at 3 different school sites, it doesn't matter. You can go to one school site and pick up meals for all 3 students. We will be looking up the students' names to confer that we have them in our program and they're enrolled with Fayette County. And the school will have school lunch codes for them, their barcodes. Middle school and high school students, if they have their badges, we can use those as well to scan to bring up their accounts. The student does not have to be present. Next.
But again, that's a change from the spring.
No, that's the same.
Oh, it's the same that you had to enter?
I'm sorry, no, that
there you go.
correct.
Yeah, you're 18 and under,
Correct.
you can feed anyone. You didn't have to be a student necessarily.
That
Okay,
is the
Bart.
same, yes. With that, just remember that we're not able to serve meals on non-school days. So Monday, September 7th is Labor Day. So that week we will do meals on Wednesday, but provide 4 days that week. Next.
So real quick, Michelle, so 4 days that week, but you're not doing it till Wednesday. So the week before, are they going to get enough to cover Monday and Tuesday?
Right, they'll get 2 days on Mondays and 3 days on Wednesdays.
But no, but that week, like if they don't go to Wednesday,
They'll get 4 days of meals.
they're getting 4 days of meals on Wednesday, but what covers Tuesday? Like, that's my question. I'm just trying to follow this.
Tuesday will be one of the 4th day of meals.
But they're not getting it till Wednesday.
Correct, because our pattern are Mondays and Wednesdays. And
So
school is not in session on Mondays, so we will not distribute meals on Mondays.
So we can't give an extra meal the week before to cover that Tuesday and give 3 on Wednesday?
No.
Okay.
Ms. Coker, just so that I can keep this, do you mind to share this slide when you're finished with us?
Of course.
Be glad to. So starting in mid-September, we will offer a hot meal. Right now we offer a grab and go heat up meal. And then in September, we will provide a hot meal the day of pickup for the lunch. We are working with community partners to try to identify non-school areas, non-distribution locations, so we can continue to expand on our meal service. Next.
And so what would that look like in terms of phase 2 in trying to expand with community partners the areas that we're looking at? Because we know we're going from 21 sites to 47 sites. So we expand it there, and hopefully that moves us closer to our families, certainly our families in need. But we also know that we have some very isolated and somewhat dense apartment complexes, et cetera. And so we want to look at partners to use some other feeding sites and other ways of trying to bring meals to those locations.
Correct.
And what we're looking at there is, as opposed to setting up on city streets like we did before, we're looking for physical locations that we can stage and get people queued up and in that way, as opposed to operating pretty much out on the roadways. So we're looking at in apartment complexes, is there a place to either stage the bus or to use a community center or something like that? So that's sort of the next phase for phase 2, is sort of identifying where those locations will be and how those will be structured.
And we're trying to do that phase 2 the week of Labor Day, after Labor Day, on that Monday, to try to begin to move forward. So if you know of some areas that there's a community center, obviously we know with social distancing, et cetera, but we would need to have something a little more permanent for point of sale, point of contact.
Correct. And with us having the students putting in their names in our point of sale next week and the next, we'll be able to run some reports to see what schools are low in those students eating, and hopefully identify pockets and areas of students who are not eating and find out where they're located so we can search out those areas as well.
Of these expanded sites, are any of them in the neighborhoods? Or are they all at schools?
Currently,
sorry.
The initial 46 are at the schools. The phase 2 will be the external locations.
Just to throw this out here, the libraries in some of our higher need areas, like the Cardinal Valley area, they had partnered with the city for their summer programs. So I know they would be very willing because, well, I have a good relationship with them, that they would probably be very happy to work with you guys for it to be a site, the one off of Versailles Road.
yes, and we do summer feeding there every summer. There were sales. We were going to actually pick up Tate Creek Library for the first time this summer, but since our summer feeding was totally different, we didn't pick up those sites because it was just totally different. But yes, those are awesome and wonderful places. And like I said, once we're able to run our reports and find out, then we can start concentrating those areas.
So one thing I want to just pass along, and I don't know, but one of the concerns I've heard from families today is, do I make my child miss a synchronous event at school so that we can go get their food? And how do I handle that? And so,
sorry, the lunch breaks are only a half hour. So.
Right. So I'm just passing that because it's what I'm hearing. And, what I've said to families is food's the priority. You can always watch it asynchronously. I'm going to watch some of these things asynchronously, because even with my children, one of the things I'm doing is shifting their lunches to be the same. So we can eat lunch as a family and then we'll work around it. And, this is available to be modified, but I want to make sure that our staff and our teachers and Superintendent Cock are making sure that families know, like, we want you to eat first. Like, we want this to be. So I'm just communicating again that I've heard this, and I think Miss Morris has heard this as well. And so, just making sure that we're aware that families are struggling with hunger and struggling with. And some of these are families that have never struggled with hunger before or have never had this issue before, and this is all new territory for them. So just passing that message along.
I would love for us to be able to collect data from our families who doesn't have transportation to get food. With our partners, with the first NTI set, I asked for that information, but it never got. I was never supplied with it. So in my mind, I just really want to know what those numbers are, just because I know children cannot learn if they're hungry. And,
Agreed.
It's our resilient, but recovering from trauma and being hungry does cause trauma is a lot harder to recover from than a loss of instruction. So just for me personally, this is something that is important to me that I spend a lot of time and effort on, and my heart's there. And so I really want to see data on these families and know how many families can make it to the schools for the lunches.
Yeah, I want to echo Board Member Morris. This seems like it's an area where a lot of people want to contribute and help, but we cannot seem, for whatever reason, we cannot seem to be able to fit all the parts together. And I don't know if that's a lack of creativity on our part, a lack of manpower. Not quite sure where the issue is. I get a lot of calls about trying to partner with Fayette County Schools and to fill in some of these gaps where the needs are. And from hearing this presentation, we're hearing that it's in large structures where we have a lot of students and apartments and we need locations and those kind of things. So I will pass that information forward, as I'm sure the other board members will as well. I'm just going to ask here that we try to find some creative ways to allow the people that want to partner with us to make sure that we feed every single child that's in our school district. I appreciate Christy's effort when it comes to this. She has tried to be a connector, and I think we all need to be a little bit more supportive of her role there, because I'm getting a lot of calls from churches and other folks, and they walk away a little frustrated when they talk to us. I'm not putting that on anybody. I'm just saying we haven't been able to fit that part together yet, but we need to try to figure something out.
I carry that. And as a child who dealt with housing insecurity and food insecurity, I understand firsthand. So one of the things that we do have some limitations is that with this current restriction, it has to be our employees, because the students are entering in, or the parent, have personal information. So I just couldn't deliver some food to a third party and say, distribute this food, right? And so as Christy had mentioned, the library, I'm thinking about the churches, perhaps in some of our communities, a church on every corner for the most part, and how are we leveraging those institutions and what is close by in some of those densely populated apartment complexes that we already know, that we shouldn't have to mine for data. We already know the data in those places, but we still have to be that touch point, that somebody from child nutrition needs to be there as the parents are entering in that personal information into the system. Is that correct, Michelle? I don't want to misspeak.
You have to make sure somehow that the student is enrolled, yes.
But does it have to be our employee who, I would assume
Yes,
there's some
because
confidentiality there.
yes, and we have allergies and everything else that we have to be prepared for as well.
All right, so here's our commitment, Vice Chair Daniels and Board Member Morris. Let us get these 47 sites up, because this is double where we've been in the spring. And then after Labor Day, certainly by the planning meeting, come back to you with our data and how we're looking to expand and where we're going to expand to in the partners.
Thank you, Superintendent Cox.
How does that sound? And please, if you have the contact at the library, I'm sure we do as well. Reach out and share that with Myron, myself, and Michelle. Certainly over at Cardinal Valley.
Both of those contacts.
Yes.
I do have a lot of contacts in my district.
Okay.
I can connect you with the.
Well, we can reach out. I think if it just, even in your district. So, Board Member Morris, if you know of some densely populated apartment complexes that you feel that we're missing, even as we expand to 46, 47 sites that should be on the radar, and they have a community center or there's something that's an institution that we could possibly partner with, let us know. We'll bring the food to them.
And I will say the libraries reached out in the beginning, but the libraries are just now opening back up as well, and yeah. So that's another, and they had significant furloughs as well. But I know I talked to the library administrators multiple times a week about partnering. So, but yeah, but it's not just like, we've also talked about, I want to kind of put this call out there to the public too. If you all know places that we can use, a church, a community center, a American Legion post, anything that might be in your it could be some of these apartment complex, maybe the there's a spot in the apartment complex even that the manager or staff or business owner maybe allow us to use. If you know that there's a need in your community and want to partner with us. Additionally, I think even if we do these lunches, what is still missing is evening meals for our families. And so if there are groups that want to work on this, I think that's a place where we talked about it a little, but that's I'm just throwing this out. So if someone is watching or if someone is thinking, this is what we need. We need people to come to us with opportunities, because I think what we did encounter a little in the spring is everybody kind of shut down and no one really wanted to open their spaces up. And so we've got to figure that out a little bit. But I think this is a good plan, Mr. Cock. And I look forward as well to hearing the data and seeing what phase 2 is and getting our children fed. So I think at this point, let's move it on.
All right, partner. Okay. Michelle, thank you. Myron, thanks. And board, please share with the community and your stakeholders the differences that we're operating under in terms of the regs and why this may seem more restrictive. We were asking for the PIN and, the meals, etc. It's not our own doing. We're not seeking to create barriers. We're not seeking to create a culture or sort of climate of distrust, but we have to follow the regulations as promulgated. So, and we're putting out, all the states apply for a waiver, and hopefully when that's approved, we could go back to the operation that looks very similar to what we had in the spring. All right. Next, we'll talk about athletics. So we have our district athletic director here. Where's Robbie?
Yes, sir.
All right, big guy.
All right. Hello, everyone.
HSAA came up with some new guidelines or guidance, as they always do. And we continue to update. We want to give a chance to update the board and our community as to the new guidance, and then to the district's recommendation how to proceed forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you, board members, for allowing me to speak to you guys tonight about this. I want to take you through what we've been doing, kind of what the KHSA recommendations are, and then where the KHSA is going from here, and then our recommendations. I do want to start off like others before me and recognize our athletic directors and our coaches and our communities and our student athletes for really taking this challenge and taking this very seriously and working tremendously hard to get our facilities ready to make sure that we have all of the proper items in place to make sure that we are creating a safe and controlled environment for our student athletes to return to. What you're looking at now as part of the fall conditioning, you all approved, along with our local health department, return to play guidelines. And I'm not going to read them line for line because, again, you've seen these and approved them before. But we want to make sure that you understand that we've been taking temperatures. We created entry and exit points. We have been screening folks. We have made sure that we have a communication process in place. And Bob, you can go ahead and change if you'd like. We have kept everyone on campus. Student athletes are using their own equipment. They're not sharing. We had a kind donation from Kentucky American Water for water bottles, and thank you, Joe Isaacs, for and Risk Management for getting that approved for any student athlete that did not have water bottle of their own. Activities clean. We have cleaning schedules. Our custodians have been a huge part of this, as well as our coaches, to make sure that everything is clean and sanitized. Everyone's been very diligent about their appropriate personal protective equipment. Social distancing everywhere I've gone as I drive around and check on practices has been doing a fantastic job. It's not always easy keeping kids that haven't seen each other in a while socially distanced, but we've been doing a really good job as far as I've seen and as far as I've heard. And we have done a great job with our trainings, our online trainings, to make sure we're there. Just to make sure that last line on that, can you go back one sec, Bob? I'm sorry. And I want to make sure that all of the involvement by the students was voluntary and that there are no repercussions for failure to attend. It doesn't have anything to do with their ability to make a team. This has been voluntary, and overwhelmingly from the parents and the folks that I've heard from, the student athletes, it has been a great change. It has been an opportunity to get back to some type of normalcy. It has been great for their physical and mental well-being. All right, Bob, thank you. So we started in June 29th. I'm going pretty fast, so please, if you have a question, please interrupt me. So we started fall conditioning June 29th up until August 21st, Friday. We paused today while we have an opportunity to have a conversation. So in that time, I've asked our athletic directors to look at their check-in sheets because we have checked every kid in. They have signed in every day. We have taken their temperatures. We've done all those entries. And what our athletic directors are uploading weekly, the check-in sheets to a Google site that we've created for them so that we can keep an eye on those, right? So we know who's in what pod and what's been going on. So based on the information my athletic directors have shared with me, we've had 1,681 total students that have participated. These are 1,681 individuals that have been on our campus in this time. If you take that number and multiply it times the number of workouts we've had during this time, we've had 32,288 occurrences on campus. So each student has been to 25 workouts. That's 25 occurrences. That's kind of where that goes. We've had 11 total cases that we have worked through. Our coaches communicate with the families, which is key, as we've heard about with the technology and feeding. So once we hear of a case, the coach contacts the athletic director contacts me. I contact Mr. Kalk and Mr. McMillan. I also speak with Ms. Bowen, our health and wellness coordinator, who has a direct line to the local Fayette County Health Department. We grab that test. We make sure that we go through the contact tracing. Of those 11 So if you take that 11 and divide it by 32,288, you get a 0.034% infection rate. And all of these 11 cases have come from external sources. So they have not occurred because of the workouts. They have been from, vacations. We had some home, infection, brother or sister or mother or father involved. In one case, we had a team sleepover, which we discourage, but we've dealt with that. So this is a little bit of information based off of the student athletes we've had and how many we've had and it's a testament to have all of those students and all of those occurrences on campus and a small number there. So thank you, Bob. So now I want to go into what the KHSA approved back on Thursday of last week. So this is option one. Option one was approved in July and then reaffirmed last Thursday. Option one, if you look at the plan, it has current plan and it has the sports: golf, soccer, volleyball, cross country, field hockey, and football, our fall sports. The National Federation of High School is what NFHS stands for. Their risk level, golf is low. Golf has been going since July 15th. And I want to send a shout out to Henry Clay's girls golf team for winning their tournament this past weekend. Great job, ladies and coach. I'll get that plug in there before I get off here. So first official practice. So you have, soccer is moderate, volleyball is considered moderate, cross country is considered low, field hockey is considered moderate, and football is considered high risk level. We have first official practice dates for option one, which is August 24th, which is today. Scrimmages, you can have inter-squad scrimmages based on the guidance from the KHSA. They are not allowed to have scrimmages with other teams. All scrimmages with other teams have been put on hold for this season. Their first contest begins September 7th for soccer, volleyball, cross country, field hockey, and September 11th, which is that Friday, for football. You can see where their number of contests has been modified based on the shortened season. So soccer can have 14. This is regular season. This does not include playoffs. Volleyball 24, cross country 9, field hockey 16, and football 9. They can have one game per week. Last regular season game, you can see that October 10th, 17th, and November 7th for football. And the postseason has been moved back a couple weeks as well. Bob, go ahead and slide to the next one. The KHSA also entertained two other options at their meeting. Option two kept the start practice date of August 24th, while it moved the first allowable competition date back for fall sports to September 28th. The Board of Control for the KHSA voted this option down 15-3 in favor of option one, maintaining the September 7th and 11th start date. Okay, next slide, please. The other option was option three, and it's considered the hybrid model, where they kept the start practice date of August 24th, and they moved the first allowable competition for volleyball, football, soccer to September 28th, while keeping the first allowable competition date for cross country and field hockey at September 7th. They voted this option down 13-5 in favor of option one. Okay, I've been running through there. Any questions so far? I'm going 1,000 miles an hour, and I apologize. No? Okay, so what's next? So the KHSA is going to send this guidance to the state government authorities, the state health department, and the governor's office, who spoke this evening about this, about the KHSA's approval. And they're going to send that no later than August 26th. So the plan is going to go through KDE guidance documents, the attendance restrictions by the local health department. So they're going to give us some guidance on attendance. They're going to give us some guidance on spectators. They're going to give us some guidance on concessions, ticketing. They're going to give guidance on groups such as bands and cheer squads at games. Now, cheer and dance have been approved for competitive, but not necessarily for sideline or in between halves of a game. They're going to talk about seating at stadiums. And go ahead, Bob. They're going to talk about squad and sideline limits. We've already got limits for rosters. They're going to talk about entry limits for individuals. They're going to talk about mask and face coverings for all persons that are, if we allow spectators, playing rules and changes, guidance for officials, guidance for fans, and guidance on concessions, like I said before. So I'm going to stop there. And well, actually, I'll go ahead and go to the recommendations. So
stop. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, stop right there. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, stop right there. You were right. Any questions? All right.
So you guys, go ahead.
And Robert, I do have one question, and
Yes,
maybe
sir.
you can address a little bit around the volleyball issue, because there have been some questions regarding what's going to happen inside, and how prepared are we for that type of activity, like a volleyball?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. So volleyball has a limit of 15, I believe it's 15 young ladies per side on their roster. So that's been pared down. The benches will be spaced out for social distancing. They'll be wearing masks while they're not in the game. We are discussing, again, as far as spectators go, there will be no handshakes. There will be none of that after the game. What was I going to say? The locker rooms are going to remain closed until we allow our schools to get what are called victory sprayers, which have a misting effect to clean the locker rooms. And we get our coaches trained on that. We're waiting for those to arrive. It's going to be a very controlled, small environment. Again, spectators, this one concerns me most for spectators because it is a small enclosed environment where we have to worry about the airflow issue with our ventilation system. So we're waiting on guidance from the KHSA, and then once we get that guidance, then we'll bring our extracurricular group committee back together and discuss that guidance and see how we want to move forward as a district. And that will be shared with you before moving forward. Is that helpful?
Yes, thanks.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Sayer, on these protocols that you're referencing, do you mind to speak just to the enforcement piece? I know you went over how they're enforced during conditioning, but moving forward, what does enforcement look like?
So moving forward, enforcement looks very similar to what it does now. We're still going to have the check-ins. We're still going to have entry-exit points. We're still going to do all of the things. Really, the thing that changes for this is we're moving from pods of 10 to groups of 50 or less. And what we talked about as athletic directors last week, and as a school district with my chief in our high school office and the chief of the middle school office, and we talked about when they don't have to be together in a large group for a team, then they don't need to be. So very, very few times as a former coach and as someone that's been involved with athletics for the last 22 years in Fayette County, do we really need to get together as a large group. So we can maintain the small group setting for individual skill work and then limit our time or really take a look and manage our time as a large group together. But the other enforcement and the other protocols we will maintain throughout.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I have something to add that it spans further than the sports, but just from my personal experience and from what I've seen, it's uncomfortable for people to kind of call their coworkers out. And what I would like to see is us to have a tip line in place so that if procedures aren't being followed, if social distancing, if masks aren't being required, that families or coworkers could feel comfortable with anonymously reporting that. So
absolutely.
I would just
absolutely.
Like
well, I'm sorry. I can't see you talking. I'm sorry.
Oh no, that's okay. It's a delay, so I'm sorry. I'm just saying that I would like that put into place because it's going to be very uncomfortable for some of our employees to, turn in their, other employees. So just to make sure that that we have a good way to report and nobody really feels like they're attacking somebody, I think having a tip line in place would be really, really helpful for sports and our classrooms and teachers.
No, it's essential for us as a district to hold each other accountable and to work together as a team. When we have one song, one band, it goes to this as well. And I've discussed this today actually, and we talked about how the Fayette County tip line that we have for our schools, I believe, is still up and running. Bob, you can correct me, or someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but that is an avenue that we already have in place that can be used for this. And what I need to do is make sure that that's put out there for everyone to know and communicate that. So that will be something that I will do immediately following this based on conversations and your request. That's a great idea.
Thank you.
All right, let's move. Oh, go on, Mr. Murphy.
I'm sorry, just one more thing, and I may have missed it on one of the slides. Mr. Sayer, has KHSAA mentioned anything about transportation, or is that something that we anticipate will be coming with this other guidance?
Yeah, that will be coming with further guidance. As of right now, based on our conversations inside the district, we will not be using school buses. And really, typically, the only sports that use school buses in Fayette County are our football teams. So we're working with our teams and discussing options for that. We have some time before we have a first contest. If we start if we continue with option 1 from the KHSA, there are other, like we talked about with feeding, there are other partners that some of our churches have vans or buses or some things, but we need to make sure that we continue to be safe and distance and create an environment for our kids that's healthy. Yes.
Thank you.
All right, let's move forward with the district, with your recommendations for the district.
All right. Thank you, Bob. So Fayette County Public Schools has consistently followed KHSA guidelines with fidelity. In my years, Fayette County has always done a great job. We've been a leader in the state of Kentucky, and I hear that constantly from the KHSA members. Our athletic directors do a great job. Our school athletic directors and coaches have been doing a fantastic job based on the data provided previously, and will continue to do so given the opportunity. They are invested. They understand that it only takes one person to, for lack of a better term, mess this up for everyone. So we understand that we want to make sure that our kids are in a safe environment. We want to make sure our families feel comfortable. We want to understand that that there's a lot riding on this, because it's what everyone holds most dear is our children that we're dealing with. So everyone is very serious. Everyone is very focused on this. We're prepared to stop practice or games at a moment's notice. The KHSA has taken away any fees or any fines for canceling games or contracts. So our coaches and athletic directors have been, or I know that I've talked to our athletic directors, if they do not feel comfortable with the situation, if we're going to a game where they feel like a district has not provided them enough information where they feel safe to send their team, then we are to cancel and move on at any moment. And they have that autonomy, and we can discuss that at length, but they will not be, it will not be frowned upon whatsoever if they decide to do so, because it's in the best interest of our kids here in Fayette County. We all know that it's good for kids, both physically and mentally, to be engaged in safe and controlled environment. My daughter right now, we live in another county. She is trying out for her soccer team. And I can tell you that her demeanor and her attitude and just her general well-being has improved greatly since she's been able to compete and get out and get involved. And we've had these conversations in the families, and it's not been easy. But the district we're in has done a good job, and we feel comfortable. And I want all of our families to have that feeling, and get those mental health benefits from physical activity and competition. So my recommendation is for us to follow the KHSA approved guidelines, option 1, and make sure that we are staying on top of it, providing opportunities for those to provide tips if we need to, and continue daily to self-check and monitor this.
So that's the district's recommendation to continue the current course. Obviously, nothing's final. If we see a spike or something happens that causes an increase in COVID-19 cases as a result of workouts or things that we're not doing properly, then we will certainly stop and intervene and stop. practice, etc. But we believe that this is in the best interest of the students, our student athletes, the coaches, and we've demonstrated up until this point, we demonstrated the ability to adhere to the guidelines, to enact those safety measures when needed, contact tracing, etc., in order to keep our coaches and student athletes safe. So unless there's some other information that may come forward as a result, as other entities review the guidelines or add guidance, we certainly can come back and have a discussion. But for now, based on what was espoused and promulgated on Thursday, I believe, we want to continue with the current course.
That's correct.
So there's no real sort of board action or vote. I'm just sharing with the board just so that you're aware that as you interact with members of the community, you understand sort of the rationale, where we're at, what we've been doing to keep our student athletes safe. And if it came to if an event presented itself where they weren't safe, we would certainly intervene and bring it to a halt.
Robbie, I know several coaches were able to jump across state lines this weekend and take a look at good and bad practices alike. I know you're getting that list, and I would encourage that while we have time, we continue to do that and learn all the good things that are going on, and maybe some things we don't want to do. So I would encourage that y'all keep skipping around and taking some good looks at things. And I want to commend, I've been going to football practice since June the 29th, 5 days a week. And it is amazing, the consistency, the dedication of the coaches, the boosters, the volunteers, the parents, and the kids. It is really amazing how they have followed the rules. And they know ultimately they can't play if they don't follow rules. And that's a heck of a carrot. And it's working so far. And we have to give them the leeway to try it. But ultimately it's our responsibility if we see things that aren't working. I'm glad a lot of the coaches are on board with, the flexibility of pulling the plug, so to speak, or not playing somewhere if it doesn't make sense. That flexibility of not having contracts this year have to be honored is huge. That gives us a lot of flexibility. So I know your work is hard. Your team's work is very hard. I commend what you guys have been doing so far, and keep it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. They've been doing a great job.
I'll just like to say, we have, and all of us have gotten these emails, but I've gotten some interesting emails from some students and some I know personally. And I think they realize that they have to make sure that they're adhering to the protocols. So the more, Robbie, I think that we can continue to drive that culture, not only with our adults and their families, but also, again, put that ownership with our students as well for making sure that they're holding each other and adults when people see, if you see something, say something around non-compliance.
Absolutely. Yes, it's going to take all of us to make sure that this is done correctly.
I have to say I haven't been able to answer every single email, but I have really enjoyed hearing from these athletes advocate for themselves, especially the females. And I've just been really impressed with the quality of their writing, and I've really enjoyed actually reading a lot of them. So I just want to throw that out there that I know that being an athlete makes strong people, and so I've really actually kind of enjoyed hearing all their circumstances and their goals and how hard they've been working. And it's obviously very important to them. And they have some of them have a lot riding on it. So I'm glad that you presented that data, because back in the back of my head, I didn't think we had any outbreaks based on practice and workouts, but I'm glad that you put that in the slide because I remember that it came from vacations or sleepovers. So I appreciate you putting that together and reminding us all. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And to the points that have been made, I mean, look, I know everyone wants to play. I saw one of my students who's a soccer player today during our textbook distribution. I said, "Are you looking forward to getting back into the groove of the season?" They said, "Yeah, but I'm afraid that it's going to shut down." And that's contingent, though, on all of us, right? So we know that prospect is out there. And no one wants to be in a situation where, the actions we take now mess up the season for everyone else. So there's a responsibility piece to that, which we've been talking about consistently. If we want kids back in school, if we want to get back into the normal routine of sports, it's the whole hands, face, and space speech that we've been hearing: washing our hands,
Absolutely.
wearing our mask, maintaining social distancing, following the protocols that we've outlined. And I'll be interested to see what KHSA brings for the spectator component of that and how we react to that. So it's a shared effort, and we all want to get to that point of quote unquote normal, but it's going to take all of us making that commitment.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well said, and I'm available to police any stadiums for any kind of misguidance whatsoever.
I'll take you up on that.
On any Friday night, just let me know.
As a compliance officer, but not as a
There you
spectator, right?
We'll get him a badge. We'll get him hooked up.
You got it. Robbie, thank you for the presentation.
Yes,
Thanks
sir.
to our coaches, our athletic directors, our school leaders, our principals, certainly James, and to you, Tracy, as well. All right, with that, I'm going to ask Myron Compton to come forward, Chief Operating Officer for this month's monthly construction progress report.
Thank you, Superintendent Kalk. Starting with our STEAM and Success Academies, we've adjusted the schedule a week or so. We'll be moving in on September the 9th. We've been coordinating with both principals of the programs and look forward to getting moved into that building before we start our in-person instruction. But things are coming along very nicely. This last month, we had curb and gutter continued, roughly complete, sidewalk and loading deck and concrete, as well as our asphalt and binder course. We've had our structural steel canopies finished, and our roof installation is near completion. We've started our siding and window installation. Door frames are done. Terrazzo flooring was completed on the second floor. Our ceiling tile and grid and our flooring has continued in Area A and began in it finished in Area C and began in Area A. We are with our metal stud framing at the canopies, and we've started our gypsum board finishing. And our kitchen equipment hookups and startups have started. Our HVAC grills and diffusers is roughly 98% complete. And our sprinkler rim outs with some of the final work to be done. For the month of August, again, this is just sort of, we're at that last 3 to 5%, just getting everything done. All the site work will be wrapped up and done. Our paver installation will be complete. Our roofing done, as well as the window, door, and aluminum canopy installations. Our flooring will be done, as well as our ceiling grid and our framing. And we will have all of our HVAC work done, as well as our plumbing. So again, it's just sort of getting that final work done and getting things moved in and set up for that staff that is very excited in both programs to be in that new facility. And if you've been by Georgetown Road, it's pretty much transformed that facility, and we're looking forward to getting into it. So Bob, if you could scroll down. The administrative office building at 450 Park Place now has a name at the top of the building. So if you're over on that side of town, if you look up, we are easily identifiable for the public that we'll be serving coming there. Again, we are looking to open this, get the schedule completed in September. For the month of July, we had our drywall done, our chiller was set in place, our line sets and duct work from the second to the fourth floor was near completion. We've had our electrical above ceiling rough-in completed, our door installation frame continued, as well as the bathroom accessories. Our flooring installation has continued. Our plumbing and finished paint will begin in areas that were available. Our sprinkler fire department connections will be complete. Letters on the building have been installed that I've mentioned earlier, and our casework installation has begun in the main lobby. For this month, we've continued the installation of the casework. We will install and complete the chiller, finish the work on the second and third floors, and continue things such as hydronic piping, installation of ceiling grids, our mechanical, electrical, plumbing installations, and our drywall installation. We will have some painting to finish up. We have some plumbing fixtures on the second and fourth floor that need to be complete, and our drywall work on the first floor, and our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing will continue in the main electrical and mechanical rooms. For our security vessels, that work will again continue through December. You will see that we have ongoing construction at Ashland, Harrison, Henry Clay, Maxwell, PLD, Dunbar, and Beaumont. We've had work start today at Southern, Middle, and MLK. And we have 6, I think, remaining projects that will be finished between now and December. They're listed for you: Rosa Parks, Julius Marks, Southern, Veterans Park, and Lansdowne. So again, for our safety initiatives for those secure vegetables, we have 14 sites completed. I think 6 in some stage of progress, 2 that just initiated, and we have 6 more to wrap. And we will have those done before the beginning of next year. And all of our schools, when we return to in-person instruction, we'll have secure vegetables. So again, we appreciate our community for that work. One more, Bob, I believe. Tates Creek High School, again, looking at a 2-year process there for that building. We have started our excavation. There's a lot of site work taking place right now, under slab plumbing, concrete walls in various settings, footings and caissons. Through August, we will have more drilling, and we'll continue the plumbing and backfill of the concrete, and we will start some geo-well thermal drilling. And again, I will be reaching out to the neighbors in terms of some of that work, because that will be a little more noisy than some of the other things that we're doing. But we've been posting all of our information on the website, and we're looking forward to just keeping this project moving. And Superintendent Koch, that should conclude my report.
All right. Thank you, Byron. Board, any questions?
I have one quick question. I do want to make sure all the we ordered several for our middle schools. We ordered several outdoor class or what's the word? Portables. Thank you. Mm-hmm. All those have arrived and are in, and they're all set up for when we return.
Various stages. We will have those up and running this fall, Stephanie, in anticipation of kids returning this fall. But we do have overcrowding at Winburn and Jesse Clark in particular that we're trying to get done.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Myron. Thank you, Madam Chair. And with that said, I'll turn the meeting back over to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Superintendent Koch. Next on the agenda is the approval of routine matters. A motion is in order to approve the minutes of the July 13th board planning meeting, July 23rd special meeting, and July 27th regular meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education.
I move to approve the minutes as outlined.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. We have a motion by Mr. Murphy. Do I have a second?
A second.
Second by Mr. Love. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, I will entertain a motion to approve our consent items.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve our consent items as listed.
Thank you, Mr. Love.
Second.
Second by Mr. Murphy, second by Mr. Daniels. So I have a motion by Mr. Love, a second by Mr. Daniels. Is there any further discussion on the consent items? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. At this time, I'll turn the agenda back over to Superintendent Koch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Board. We do have some action items this evening. The first up, a contract for elevation strategies. This is a tool that we've been using in the district for quite some time as part of the superintendent's plan, and was incorporated as a strategy in the tool under our current strategic plan. In this platform, we need your approval because these are some of the strategies that are used to support our English language learners. And our Director of English language learners and Gifted and Talented Services, Lori Bowen, is here if you have any questions.
If there are no further questions for the staff, I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2021 contract with Elevation Strategies.
Thank you, Mrs. Morris.
I will second.
So we have a motion by Mrs. Morris, a second by Mr. Murphy. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board. The next item for your consideration is a contract with Atlas Greenhouse to build a greenhouse at Leedstown Middle School. Our middle school chief, Mr. Tracy Bruno, is available to respond to any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for the staff at this time? If there are no further questions or recommendations, in order to approve the contract with Atlas Greenhouse to construct a greenhouse at Leedstown Middle School.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the contract for the greenhouse at Leedstown Middle.
Thank you. So I have a motion by Mr. Love.
Second.
Second by Mr. Daniels. Any further questions? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board. The next item for your consideration is a contract with TNTP to support professional learning opportunities for principals and teachers. TNTP is the new teacher project. Senior Director of School Leadership, Sharonda Morton, is available to respond to any questions that you may have at this time.
Are there any questions for the staff at this time?
Is this the group that we usually use for like the Leadership Institute and these, or is this a new vendor?
No, we use TNTP for all. I'm not sure if you're, Board Member Murphy, thinking about, oh, wow. Our group that worked with the CSI schools?
No, does TNTP, do they do the Superintendent's Leadership Institute? And
They
kickoff.
They do work with teachers and school leaders, really around the instructional core and focusing on strong instruction, high expectation, closing the achievement gap.
Okay, so but we have used them. We've been using them. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine.
Are there any additional questions for the staff? If there are no further questions, the recommendation is in order to approve the contract with TNTP.
I move to approve the contract with TNTP.
Thank you, Mrs. Murphy. So a second by Mrs. Morris. So I have a motion by Mr. Murphy, a second by Mrs. Morris. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Board. The next item for your consideration is a contract with the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning to provide professional development and coaching for schools, which is required as part of Kentucky Comprehensive Literacy Grant. Title I Coordinator Mindy Mills is available to respond to any questions that you may have at this time.
Manny, is this training across K through 12?
This is for Title I schools around literacy. I'll let Mindy weigh in.
This is part of the Kentucky Comprehensive Literacy Grant, which we were granted last spring. Continuation a little bit of the Striving Reader Grant that we had for the previous few years. So these schools that we are asking for this contract for now are middle and high schools that are part of the Frederick Douglass feeder pattern.
That's right. The partnership zone. That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
There are no further questions for the staff. A recommendation is in order to approve the contract with the Collaborative for Teaching and Learning to provide professional development and coaching as part of the Kentucky Comprehensive Literacy Grant.
So moved.
So motion by Mrs. Morris.
Second.
Second by Mr. Daniels. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board. The next item for your consideration is the instructional fee schedule for the 2020-2021 school year. Our school chiefs put this document together each year. Students who qualify for free lunch are exempt from paying any fees, and students who qualify for reduced lunch pay discounted fees. Our chiefs will work with our schools to amend fees as appropriate, given the unusual circumstances of this school year. I believe the fees are the same as they were last year, so there doesn't appear to be an increase in those fees. If there's any questions, our school chiefs are prepared to respond at this time.
Are there any questions for the staff? If there are no further questions, the motion is in order to approve the student instructional fee schedule for the 2020-2021 school year.
So moved.
Is that Mr. Daniels?
Second.
Second by Mr. Love. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, Board. At this time, I'm going to ask our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. John White, and Director of Finance, Mr. Roddy Jackson, to present our unaudited year-end financial reports and our monthly financial reports.
Good evening.
You can speak up a little bit. I think that's Rodney.
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you better.
Okay, thanks. The general fund review for the unaudited year end of June 2020 reflects as follows. The fund balance reflects $50 million as indicated by the blue arrow. Revenue $582 million versus expenses of $532 million. Next. When you compare both years, 2020 versus 2019, you will see the fund balance for this year is $50 million versus $61 million for last year, approximately $11 million less than last year at the same time. Next. The total revenue is approximately 798.5 versus total expenditures approximately 708 million. Net fund balance approximately 90.5 million is indicated by a black arrow. Next. The details of all funds combined, Fund 1 through 7,000 is indicated on the screen. As you can see, that ties to the red arrow, 90.5 million. Next. When you're with the beginning balance included, it shows revenue of 582 million for 2020 versus 551 million for 2019. Thus, approximately 31 million higher comparing this year to last year, of which approximately 130.6 million is related to on behalf at the same point this year versus 121.6 million. The true difference is therefore 22 million. Next. When you subtract out the beginning balance for both years, it's 511 million for 2020 versus 499 million for 2019. Thus, $12 million better at this time than last year. The true difference is $3 million because of 9 million in on behalf difference from year to year. Next. Total expenditures, 532 million for 2020 versus 490 million for 2019. This also includes on behalf. The spending is up approximately 42 million from last year at the same time. The true difference is about 33 million because of the 9 million in on behalf difference at the same point. Next. The balance sheet reflects total assets 85 million, total liabilities 35 million. Our financial position remains sound. Relation to assets versus liability. Trust funds are indicated as follows. Next. So the year-end summary is as follows. There's 130.6 million in on behalf payments of expenses and revenues indicated in this report. The balance sheet also reflects that total liabilities of 35 million, of which 19.5 million is accrued salaries and benefits payable. That 19.5 million is where teachers and less than year-round staff have the ability to make a decision if they want all three of their checks at the end of the year or have them paid over July 15th, July 31st, and August 15th. We have to accrue that for accounting purposes. Our ending fund balance only reflects activity and revenues expenses through June as applicable. Our final fund balance will include accruals of expenses and revenues through August 15th that will be moved back into June 20th as applicable per accounting standards. Historically, there's been a net increase of anywhere from $8 to $10 million. Please note this amount maybe was higher this year because of delayed tax filings being moved from April to July. This will reflect in true fund balance period in next month's working budget presentation. But right now we indicate that the anticipated ending June 30, 2020 balance is projected to be between $63 to $65 million. Other notes, the final year-end adjustments and notes and other requirements are being completed at this time. The annual year-end external audit has begun for the 2020 year. And once this annual audit is complete, you'll receive the final audited financials for the 2020 fiscal year. The audit committee and the board will present these final report in November 2020. Next. This is a reconciliation of what I presented on the very beginning of the presentation showing unaudited fund balance, which we submitted to KDE at $50 million. Since then, we've had $1 million reimbursed for food service, property tax $133,000. Delinquent and omitted taxes came in at 432,726. Motor vehicles 1.3, utility taxes 1.7, occupational license tax. This will normally be around $4 to $5 million. Well, again, in April we would have got that additional 4 to 5 million, but we didn't get in April. It ended up coming in July and early August. So that's why it's this high this year to $8.3 million. Tuition 7,138, miscellaneous revenue 217,418, and Medicaid 84,445. This resulted in an additional revenue at the year end of $13.3 million. Workers' comp, sick leave, and other adjustments we have to make at year end reflected another $1.2 million, and the GEARS reimbursement was 1.6. Total revenue and adjustments were $66.3 million. Once you take out the accrued expenses, which also for things that come in after June 30th, we pay for in July and the first 15 days of August that have occurred prior to June 30th that we have to book back. Thus, projected total ending fund balance as of today is $64.9 million. Next. Next.
Mr. Jackson, how does that fund balance compare to the previous year? Does that tend to be is that pretty consistent with where we've been?
Yeah. Previous year was about $71.2 million. So about $6 million, $5 or $6 million less than last year.
And explained mostly by the current context?
Yes.
So Rodney, when you think about our expenses right now associated this past year, especially a lot of the COVID-related expenses, we don't have any revenue that's coming in yet to be able to offset that. Have we received anything?
Yeah, we received the GEARS funding, which I reflected like 2 screens back, about 1.6 million.
Does that reflect everything, or will we receive additional funding?
There's additional CARES funding, which is called ESSER. I can't think what ESSER stands for, but that's about another $11 to $12 million, I think.
Thanks.
And we're also looking into getting FEMA. Myself, John, and Ann Sampson, the new budget director, have been working with FEMA constantly trying to figure out how we can get more money back on that end also.
It can, is there a way, and I think it's elementary and secondary emergency relief is what ESSER is. That's an esoteric thing. Is there a way that we could kind of get a summary of the COVID relief monies that have come in and then what's gone out? Do we have that, or is that in a very early stage?
We're still in the very early stages. I can tell you that we've been working with Mr. Roman James. He's put together a Google sheet that we're collecting information for things that we spend on they can be potentially reimbursed for. It's about $650,000 at the last time I looked, in addition to the other things that we're working on already budgeted for related to our grant spending plan. But we can put together some in more detail for you, per your request.
That would be excellent.
Any other questions?
All right. So I think we should vote on them separately.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So, but actually, yes, we're going to vote on them separately. And then we are going to take like a 2-minute break because there's been some messages in this group. And then we're going to come back and we're going to wrap this up because I know everybody's hungry and tired and wants to move on. So I will entertain a motion to approve the monthly treasurer's report of revenue expense reports as presented to the board.
I'll make a motion to approve the monthly treasurer's report as presented to the board.
So a motion by Mr. Daniels, second by Mrs. Morris. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0. And then we also, as in order to approve the monthly treasurer report as presented to the board, right?
For the first, you just presented the unaudited year-end financial report. You still got to present the financial report, Rodney.
Yes, for July.
For July.
Yeah.
All right, then I just botched
Yeah,
that.
you just did it.
Yeah.
I read.
Sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah, so
You
this
need a
approved
motion
the monthly
to,
treasurer's report, and we should have just approved the unaudited.
Correct.
That's
Just
correct.
the unaudited report.
So
I make a motion to approve the unaudited year-end financial report.
yes, thank you.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Murphy, second by Mr. Daniels. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Hey, Rodney, do you have any idea what the collection rates were for the city?
I don't know, but ours was better.
All right.
Give me that now. What was our collection rate?
For instance, occupational license tax, we were expecting it to be down when we talked potentially back in May, and we ended up only coming short like $500,000.
Okay.
So that was way better than what we anticipated could happen at that time.
All right. At this time, we're going to take a movement break, and we will be back at 8:27.
Well, I maintain, Rodney, that all of these grant applications, a lot of these grant applications were tied to some, you had to kind of have all of your taxes and other things in order. So I think that benefited Fayette County Schools for sure.
Everybody but the superintendent. All right.
I'm here, partner. Sorry about that.
Mr.
So-
Jackson, keep it
There
going.
we go. Our next presentation is this month's monthly financial report. Mr. Jackson, you're up once again.
Bob, you put up, is the screen up, Bob? Because I can't see it.
It's up. Can you see it, Rodney?
No, I can't.
We're on the title slide right now.
Can you give me 1 second?
You got it.
Ms. Chatfield, while I have you on the, while we're researching this, since we actually already approved this, what do we do?
I'm sorry, what's the question again?
I incorrectly read this and we voted and we approved this before we did the audit a second ago. And then I don't know if we need to untake that. I don't know what. I was reading the script and the script had the incorrect thing.
So you approved the monthly financial report before you received it?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
Well, no.
Out of an abundance of caution,
Rescind.
I would rescind the previous vote, take the report, and then vote on it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we go ahead and rescind the prior approval of the monthly financial report for 8/24.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. Love. Thank you, Ms. Morris. So motion by Mr. Love, second by Mrs. Morris. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes 5-0.
Wow.
All right. Rodney, can you see it?
Yeah, it just popped in on the other computer. It's weird, but give it an echo.
You must have those dual monitors.
Okay, the monthly report, the period ended July 31st. Fund balance indicated by a blue arrow is $49 million. Revenue is approximately $57.5 million and expenses $8.5 million. Next. When you compare year to year, the 2021 fiscal year versus the 2020 fiscal year, fund balance is $49 million at this time this year versus $60.5 million last year at the same time. Thus, $11.5 million less. Next. Total revenue for all funds is $60 million. Total expenditures for all funds, $16 million. The net fund balance is approximately $44 million, indicated by the black arrow. Next. As you can see, funds 1 through fund 7,000 is indicated on this screen, and it still ties to the red arrow showing $44 million. Next. With the beginning balance for this year so far, and this beginning balance is only as of what the first $50 million that I talked to you about. We have $57.5 million for 2021 versus $68.5 million for 2020. Thus $11 million less than last year. Next. Without beginning balance, you can see we're approximately the same, 7.4 million this year versus 7.6 million last year. Next. Similar to the previous screen, expenses comparing this year to last year is practically the same. 8.4 million this year versus 8.1 million last year. Next. The balance sheet encumbrance summary is as follows. Total assets, $70 million. Total liabilities, $14 million. Our financial position remains sound in relation to assets versus liabilities. Related to encumbrances, you didn't notice any encumbrances in the year-end report because the way Munis works, it picks the encumbrances up and physically moves them to the next year. But the July encumbrance balance at the end was $7.9 million. If you subtract $7.9 million from the balance that I presented to you earlier, it would drop to $41.1 million. Next. Fund 7,000 trust fund has the following balances: Marcy Thompson, $249,699; Dorothy Smith, $19,342; and John Price Fund, $40,121. All other funds have been transferred and reconciled to the Bluegrass Community Foundation as received. Are there any questions or concerns?
On the encumbrances piece, do we have, are most of those POs exhausted if they've carried over from the fiscal year ending 2020? Do we, will most of those go unfulfilled, or have we factored that into that equation?
If you recall, back in May, it was about 7.6 million, if I recall correctly. We had this discussion, and we told you we thought we'd get it down to up under 2.5 million. Mm-hmm. We actually got it down to 1.6 million. So it's only 1.6 million of that 7.9 carried forward in this year. And it's basically for things for the operations department that they already had started that may have had some issue with weather or some forth they couldn't do, some things like that.
Okay, excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? That's my report.
Thank you, Rodney.
Now, at this time, a motion is in order to approve the monthly treasurer's report of revenue expense reports as presented to the board.
I will make a motion to approve the monthly treasurer's report for real this time.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy.
All right, second.
Second by Mr. Daniels. So we have a motion by Mr. Murphy, a second by Mr. Daniels. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, thank you, board. That was the last of our action items. We have some informational items for discussion this evening. The first, I'd like to begin our conversation with the board, or continued conversation about the tax levy for the fiscal year 2020-2021. With us this evening to share information, Chief Financial Officer, Mr. John White, Director of Finance, Mr. Rodney Jackson, and Director of Budget, Financial Planning, Ann Sampson.
Good evening. This is where we're going to talk about the tax rate discussion. This is the first. Next slide, please, Bob. And putting all the pieces together, every piece of information that you've received so far, plus what you're going to hear tonight relating to the rates, is all part of the decision-making process. Next slide. Budget and finance coming together, presenting you information to make a sound decision. Next slide, Bob. And the next couple of slides are monthly trend bar graphs that you've seen all year long. You saw it earlier tonight, but here is again, just as the revenue trend for the year. Next. And corresponding expenses for the fiscal year, comparing FY20 to FY19. Next slide. And this is the slide that you saw earlier, comparing June 30 balances for FY20 compared to June 30 FY19 or 2019. Next slide. Part of your decision making and responsibility of the board, as well as ours as financial managers of the district, are maintaining a healthy fund balance. COVID-19 will definitely impact us for FY21. As you have seen, we've started, there was a 50 million, 10 million above the tentative budget is a one-time resource. Conditions are unlikely to align in the future the way we'd like, and we need to be careful about recurring operating needs. A healthy fund balance is needed to maintain a good credit rating. A good credit rating is needed to maintain good bond rates, to keep our borrowing costs low so that we can continue as we have been doing, or you have decided to do, as far as purchasing properties, purchasing buildings, or constructing new schools. As you're aware, our board policy requires a 10% minimum of general fund budget, excluding the on behalf numbers. Next slide. Bottom line, basically this table shows the progression from the tentative budget fund balance carry forward of 55 million, plus the accruals that Rodney just spoke about, revenue of 8.4, adjustments to workers' comp, sick leave, and other adjustments is 1.3, gears reimbursement of 1.6, and then where we accrue the revenues back to the old year, we also do the same thing with expenses. Expenses of 1.4, bringing us to an estimated final or projected final fund balance for June 30, 2020 of just under 65 million. Next slide. The tentative general fund budget was 566.4 million in both revenues and expenses. This includes the on behalf number of 127 million. This tentative budget projected a $7 million increase in the local property tax revenue. That number, if you will, keep that $7 million number on the forefront of your mind. We'll come back to that. But there was a 7 million projected increase in local property tax in our tentative budget. Next slide. Here's the meat of the discussion. Basically have multiple tax rate options. The first one, the 4% revenue increase rate, is really not an option we have been considering all year. We've been considering and talking about maintaining a flat tax rate going into FY21. But just for your information, the 4% revenue increase rate, the 4% rate for real estate is 84.3, and the same for intangible, 84.3, which would generate an additional $17 million over last year, 16 of which would go to the general fund. The compensating rate, the compensating real property rate with a flat tangible is 81.1 cents for real estate and a 76-cent tangible rate, which would generate $5.5 million. Keeping the rates flat, in other words, no tax rate change at all, keeping them the same as 81 cents for real estate, 76 for tangible, would generate a $5.2 million increase. Here's where I wanted you now call on that $7 million number that I mentioned earlier. The tentative budget projected additional real property revenue of $7 million. Keeping the rates flat actually only generates just under $5 million for the general fund. Total of 5.2, but if you look to the right, you can see the general fund piece of that 5.2 is 4.92. The compensating rate for both real and tangible is 81.1 cents, which would generate just under $7 million, of which 6.4 will be for the general fund. So keeping in theme with the athletic discussion we had earlier, I will take a time out and allow you to look at this, think about it, and I will entertain any questions you might have about the table. before you and the rates that we just talked about, or I just presented? Seeing none thus far. Next slide, Bob. This is a table, just basically it shows the one-time impact. Actually, that's not tangible property owners. That is actually the homeowner. That's a real property owner.
Real property.
Yeah, so that's a typo we forgot to remove. So this is not tangible. This is real property owners. But scenarios of different home values. Taking the first one to the far left, a home value of 100,000, the 4% rate would basically cost a one-time additional tax to a homeowner with a $100,000 home of $33, no change. At 81 cents is $0. If the decision was to approve the compensating, it would be 81.1 cents versus 81 cents. And for a homeowner of a $100,000 home would be an additional one-time $1. Now, I won't go through each of those, but you can see the two different scenarios for a home value of 150,000 and also a 300,000. But the no change is just that, no change. A compensating going from 81 to 81.1 is $1.50 for a $150,000 home, or $3 for a $300,000 home. Next slide, please. The timeline and the requirements, we've talked about these before, but let's just revisit that. KRS 132.0225 allows 45 days from the certification date of the tax rates are received for districts to adopt a property tax rate for the fiscal year. We're required to advertise proposed rates twice during consecutive weeks. Each ad must be 7 days apart. Second ad must be 7 days prior to a public hearing if required. Now, notice the red note. If the choice or the decision is to either adopt the compensating or no change at all, there's no hearing required and is not recallable per KRS 160.470 subpart 2. So if the compensating rate or no change at all in the rates is your decision, then there is no hearing required and neither are recallable. So some of the timeline, the dates that we're going to look at in a moment may or may not apply. It just depends on the decision or the choice of the rate that you choose to approve. Next slide, please. Here's a chronological order. We're on August the 20th, which was late last Thursday evening. We actually received the rates from Kentucky Department of Education. We're here tonight on the 24th, seeking your direction. Not necessarily, we're not seeking for a vote tonight, but we do need some guidance on where you may be leaning, simply because that will direct us in our budget forecasting and wrapping up the final working budget, which we are required to bring to you next month. And then August 27th, we would notify the Herald Leader, and if required, August 31st, we would post the first ad. Again, if required, September 7th, the second ad would be posted, and if required, September 14th, there would be a public hearing. September 14th is also the date of our September Planning Board meeting. So the 14th, what we've done historically, I believe, is have a public hearing just prior to the board meeting. But then again, if there's no change or compensating is adopted, then the public hearing is not required, but only the board vote to adopt. And then October 3rd is our 45-day that we must meet to submit the rates to KDE. Next slide, please. Questions, comments, concerns?
John, can you just kind of go back to your slide that showed all of the various options again?
Okay, Bob, would you scroll back right there, I believe?
So my question is this: when we thought about our budget and the budget discussion,
Mm-hmm.
You think about the expenses that we're budgeting for next year. Were they anticipation? Were we anticipating, I should say, at that particular time frame that we would still be in this COVID operating environment? And do you see some potential savings, or do you see more expenses that we're going to incur for next year?
I would anticipate that we would see more expenses.
Yeah, more expenses. When we did the working budget back in May, we did anticipate
The tentative budget in May.
the tentative budget in May. I'm sorry. We did anticipate, the pandemic and what everyone was going through, right? In terms of, I call it shelter in place, but not being able to go to work and unemployment being up. And we were looking at no change in the tax rate at that time, thinking that would generate at least about $7 million. Obviously, it generates 5.2, a little less than 5 million for the general fund.
Okay.
We're looking at that about a $1.6 million difference there between the no change and compensating rate. If we are planning, or if we were anticipating $7 million in additional revenue, would we pull from fund balance? Would we pull from contingency? Where would we pull to make up the difference in either that 200,000 or the 1.6 million?
It would be fund balance.
That's what I was going to say. I would suspect that would need to come.
You pull from fund balance, and what we'll do is try to pull those things that are just a one-time, non-recurring expense.
Because when we started with the tentative, we projected a beginning number, beginning fund balance of 55, and it's actually going to end up closer to 65.
So we could certainly use that as a buffer.
Yeah, because that's my looking at this. That's my biggest concern, is that, especially in the current context, we don't want to lose. We don't want public perception, because the 1.6 million is something that a difference that we could probably manage.
I could manage. Board Member Murphy, you're right. I mean, we looked at the tentative going back to May. Those conditions haven't really changed for the vast majority of employees throughout the country. And as people are looking to, rebuild and get back to work, at the economy restarted again, certainly we don't want to add any more stress in terms of an increase in tangible or real property in terms of the tax rate, especially since we've been good fiscal stewards and you're saving up for these sorts of days, right? Not necessarily a pandemic, but if you're strategically planning, you're planning, for some days such as these. Mama said there'll be days such as these. I think that's a song, right? But certainly we could use the general fund to make up the difference.
Yeah, and the thing, it's good to work with that premise, because there are a couple of things that we're really shaky on. We quite don't really know what this whole NTI, TDL, and everything we're doing. We really don't know how many students we're really going to have. I don't know if people have left the district. If people are moving into the district, there's just so many data points that we don't quite understand at this point. And I know it's like that every year, but I think this year, more than most years, there's a lot of information that we need to collect. And if we can find enough one-time items that we can handle, and then kind of see what our situation is, and this newly constituted board next year may have some tough decisions they need to make. But I think for this year, it obviously makes sense knowing what we know right now.
Agreed. So I think unless there's any more guidance, I think we got our guidance.
we will continue to build with no change in tax rates.
Thank you.
And just as a reminder, again, this is since we're taking this route, there will not be there will not be a posting in the paper because with compensated, we do not have to do that or less. So that's the difference in process.
But there does have to be a board approved, which we will ask for when we come back on September planning of September 14.
Correct.
All right. So thank you, board team. Our agenda for this evening also includes school activity funds, monthly and year-end reports, personnel changes for July, and the annual notification of mandatory data security and best practices. At this time, I turn the meeting back over to you, Madam Chair, and we do not have a need to go into closed session this evening.
Superintendent Calk, sorry, the mandatory notification is a short presentation.
Oh, is it? All
yes,
right.
Sir.
Short, been an operative word.
Very short.
You got it. I'm sorry.
Each year, I'm required to brief the board on our data security and student data privacy. I'll go through it real quick. 702 KAR 1.170 requires that the district acknowledge to its local board prior to August 31st each year that it has reviewed guidance of the administrative regulation and implemented best practices. The biggest piece of this for us is student data security. KRS 365.734 prohibits any of our cloud providers from processing student data for any purpose other than improving services, and it specifically prohibits the use of data for advertising and selling of student data. We have data sharing agreements with all of our cloud vendors in order to both notify them of that and to make sure that they are following the Kentucky both statutes and administrative regulations. We use both industry and state recommended best practices, including the U.S. Department of Education Security Best Practices, KDE Security Guidelines, KDE Data Security Best Practice Guidelines, and KDE District Planning Guide for Disaster Recovery. We have several tools in place for breach prevention, and we're also actively improving those as we go through the pandemic and move towards more of a virtual environment. Those include all kinds of antivirus, anti-malware, vulnerability scanning, updates, denial of service mitigation, web filters, and more. I won't go into all of the details on those. Any questions about our data security and privacy best practices?
Thank you, Bob, for that report.
All right. So now I turn the meeting back over to you, Madam Chair.
A motion is in order, or excuse me. Thank you, Manny. At this time, are there any board requests or questions?
I know that Ms. Dyer loves my personnel related questions. So just for old time's sake, I had a question about subs in the virtual learning environment. Is that just something that's going to be handled at the district or the building level? I know it would be a very rare occurrence, but if we have a teacher who is in NTI 2DL that needed a sub, do we have virtual NTI 2DL subs?
Where's Jennifer?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'd like you to respond to board member.
Yes, sir. We have assigned preferred subs to each school so that each school will have a bank of substitutes, and they were able to go through some of the training that the school did as well as the district on the 2DL. And so, yes, there will be subs. Now, there are always complications and things such as if you're in Canvas and your lessons are live in Canvas and a substitute having access, and some of those things are things we're going to have to work through. But we have purposefully worked with each school to assign the preferred subs. And so there will be people that will be able to be trained. And sometimes there are collaborative efforts between team members where they have plan A, plan B, just like, when there isn't a substitute, you have that backup plan. So I'm sure there will be several options. But yes, we have purposely assigned cadre subs to each school.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. A motion is in order to make the agenda dated August 24th, 2020, on which action has been taken at this meeting as part of the minutes, as if copying the minutes verbatim.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Love,
Second.
second by Mr. Murphy. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting of the Fayette County Board of Education.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Daniels. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for everything this evening, and let's all stay in touch and have a great first week.
Great first week. Great start to the school year. Thank you, board. Thank you, team.